Hey, what's up, Mafias? Welcome back to The Commute. And in this session, I'm joined by Gandharv sir. He has been working as a director of engineer at Rapido. So this will be a value-packed session, and I hope that you really enjoy it. And Gandharv sir has started his own startup called Measure SH. It's an open source library to monitor your app's performance. So there's a lot of value to add right here. If you want to study about the library, the links will be in the description down below. And if you want to know more, Gandharv sir's socials will be linked down below as well. And I hope you enjoy this video. For now, let's get started. I actually start off my podcast every time by asking every guest this one particular question. How do you define stable life? What do you think is stable life for you?
That's quite deep question. I think it's continuously learning and unlearning in the area of your interest, right? Like evolving yourself. It could be anything, right? From relationship to your mental health to physical health to your work, your hobbies, like whichever dimension you want to take it to. But a lot of time we come with our biases as well. So like the more you learn, the more you unlearn as well. So I think it's a continuous process of doing that. So it's not quite stable if you think that way, but yeah, that's the way
As
of life.
a, as a founder, I always I've interviewed one founder.
Mhm.
Other than that, I think so. It's you. So like the definitions they tell me about stable life is pretty different from what a employee would tell because they are likely to be using that money as a consumer, and whereas a founder is trying to build something. So they are
Mhm.
more of a producer, and they think more like time is money, whereas money in an employee's mindset. So that's why I asked this particular question: how do you define stable life? Because I just want to know what is the setting behind a particular mindset. That's why
Mhm.
I usually ask this. What do you like when you trying to define stable life? Continuously learning process, right? So what do you think is the best way to actually keep on learning and not being stuck in one single position?
I think it's important to define like uh, the goals that you have, like any of the dimension that you want to write. Even in a relationship, you might want to say like what do you want to improve in it, or like give more time to someone you want to like, and things like that. Uh, in your career, you might want to learn something more. You want to make much more impact, uh, and things like that, right? In travel, maybe you want to explore 7 more countries this year,
Mhm.
right? So it could be anything, right? And it can apply to different dimensions.
I tend to agree that.
Like one of the what I like doing is cooking, and like in that, particularly like COVID gave us a lot of time to cook,
Mhm.
and I was like trying to, and there it was compulsion, so I was trying to build a framework which basically helped me cook as fast as possible.
Mhm.
I was able to do that for like compose my food together in 10 minutes by keeping platform ready. So
I
I think learning as well.
Yeah, I agree. Most of the things that I have learned is out of necessity, and that's what I see a learning process as. Like, for example, if you want to improve certain point in your life, I think reading a book about it would be much better than just randomly watching YouTube videos and not implementing anything. So I think so. If you are if you have a necessity and if you want to improve, that's the like the curve that I define as the learning curve. And yeah, I agree. What do you I think so you have a much more experience. You have a lot of experience in corporate world, right? So what do you think now this question will be a little different from what usually people ask. But what do you think about loneliness in corporate world?
Uh, haven't experienced it much. Like I always got to work with. people I have enjoyed working with.
Mhm.
So like I think till I was in Gojek, I was actually working with uh, people who were in my college as well. So they were my batchmates. Uh, right. That was quite a long time, and then uh, even the way I grow my team and all, like you mentioned, right? Like you're trying to build a community and try to learn from more people. Like even if I'm hiring a engineer at level one, like I make sure that I find a quality that where I learn from them, and that always keeps things quite entertaining and well connected. Uh, like so, like yeah,
I
like
agree.
I've not found myself in that position
Okay.
somehow.
Yeah. I usually ask this question because, especially to the founders, is because I think um, founding something, producing something out of the blue is a very lonely path. Because I think when you're a founder, the only person who has the aim is actually the aim is actually only in your head. Nobody else has that particular aim. So you cannot directly share it with anyone other than maybe your co-founder. So I think um, it's a very lonely path. That's why I usually ask these particular questions. Other than
Yeah,
that,
that's what
yeah.
I think. In my case, we are building open source tool, right? And so is our process as well, like open source. Since the time we have conceived this, I have been reaching out to engineers proactively and trying to talk to them and figure out what they do for in the similar situation when it comes to monitoring mobile applications. And I think like I'm talking to one engineer almost every week. So I'm I'm pretty open about what I'm building and how it's taking shape, taking their feedback and everything. So
Mhm.
it's cool that way.
I agree. Like one more thing that I wanted to extend on this particular question was that you talked about that you had the great chance of actually building an amazing team, right? So, like, I actually looked up the Measure SH co-founder, right? I think so. He was DOE of Grow, right?
Mhm.
So, like, how did you find yourself in between such an amazing group of people? Like, how do you actually even make such a good group of people? But because I think a lot of people who want to do startups and stuff struggle usually finding even a co-founder. So, how do you even make a group that is motivated enough and has a such a good aim to actually produce something and bring it into the real world?
So for the team at Measure, all of us used to work together at Gojek as well, right? And from there, like I went to Rapido, and my two of my co-founder went to Grow. Uh, Almost a year later, like we found ourselves doing this kind of similar thing, like that was on the basically uh, like we had to improve the monitoring of our application respectively at Rapido and Grow. And we were like, we have tried certain things at Gojek. Now we are going to try this again. Why don't we come together and do this? Right. So I think this team is just because we know each other, we have been able to put together. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think so. It's circumstances more than just reaching out. But what do you would suggest someone who doesn't have these circumstances, right? Who wants to reach out to more people?
I think so. When I build when I was building team at Gojek or even Rapido, right? Like one particular thing that I look for in people is um, how they learn and at what speed they learn, right? Any speed could be fine depending on what you are hiring for. So I look for the reasons to hire them rather than like, okay, the person didn't answer this question or that question. And my reason is primarily learning, uh, how they learn, how proactively they learn, how they take feedbacks and everything, right? So the whole session about the questions and everything is just talking point to get to know the person better. Yeah, I selected from people who I find okay, I can even if they might not know everything, uh, if I know that this person is good at learning and I can coach them, it's a good hire for me.
Okay. I think like what I'm able to get take a point from this thing is that you try to actually find out if certain person has a curious filter or not. Like are they curious enough to explore more or understand why a certain thing is working the way it is working. So yeah, I think that's a good filter. But yeah,
And also, like, even people should, like, even if they have the bias, they should, like, be aware of that and, like, then push beyond that, right? Like,
yeah.
uh, out of curiosity. So yeah.
I like there's a quote I don't remember, but like particularly I don't remember who said it, but uh, it goes like this: like there's a man who just doesn't accept that a car can just run. I want to look inside the hood. How does it even work? So
Mhm.
I think most of the founders are this way, who always want to look inside of the hood of a car. They just can't accept. Okay, car just runs. It happens. It doesn't happen. I want to look inside of it. So yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
what do you think is like? Let's talk more about Measure SH as such. Like, how do you even go about? I actually wanted to when I got first introduced to Measure SH and like relating open source, like open source world to startup is kind of very new to me. How does open source projects go around economically? Like, what are the economics of open source projects? Like, how do they earn money?
I think we have great examples in, say, GitLab,
Hmm.
right? Even earlier we had Linux, even now, right? So where, like, you can provide services around them to generate revenue. With GitLab, there are different model, like, so the core is open, but there are auxiliary features which are built on top of that, and those are charged
Hmm.
uh, based on the users, right? And then also there are seat-wise things where, like, the few things, particularly for, say, engineers or particularly for managers, and they purchase those feature, say, for 5 seats or 10 seats, and even those are sold. So apart from that, there are a lot of compliances that come to picture. So like, say, security compliance or regional data residency compliance, and all these things could be charged differently and separately. So yeah.
Okay, one more thing, like how do you even go about thinking a good idea for an open source project? Like I guess your idea came from your previous company, um, but if you want to suggest someone, okay, I just want to start an open source project, not out of just starting for the sake of starting it, but I want to solve certain problem, and I want it to be open source. What would you suggest would be the part to find these problems?
Mhm. I think the best one is the one that the problem that you have experienced yourself, right?
Yes.
In that case, you are really able to empathize with the other people as well, right? And then you need to think about where you can find the person uh, who might be facing the similar problem, talk to them again. Like, once you talk to one person, second person, you keep adding more threads to the thought, and you keep finding then pattern, and also the solutions come out of that. Like, what we are building is something what we had started with,
Hmm.
but as we talk with different kind of people, for companies who have solved for it internally to the companies who are thinking of bringing in new solutions, um, it brings in a lot of more perspective uh, and the solution as well.
So always try to be, look out, open your eyes and actually look out for things that you're already doing, and something might strike you. That's the aim. S-
Yeah. So there could be two things, right? Like, one is project itself. So for making open source project, you can do all those stuff. But if you really want to earn revenue, then you might need to think a bit differently. Uh,
Agree. More like a SaaS, something would be much better if you're just targeting revenue. I don't know, but yeah. What do you think? Like, first of all, let's have a story around Measure SH. How does it come about? How do you even start? And how did you make the team and agree with everyone? Okay, let's start with this open source project, and let's bring it this particular thing out in the world, and make sure it is the best monitoring tool for apps out there. What's the story behind all of this?
Uh, I think so. All of us co-founded. It was like we used to meet almost monthly at Jimmy's in Indranagar. It was one of those weekend,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and we were basically talking about what we are doing next at our each of our workplaces.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow, like the next thing on the charter for I think most of us was improve how mobile app is being monitored inside our companies. Uh, so yeah, Anup proposed that we should.
Okay.
Why don't we do this? We kind of aligned then and there only. Like it was kind of a surprise even for my family members that on Saturday I had job on Sunday I was telling them like yeah, I'll resign and do this on from Monday.
Yeah. Because it's a big step for anyone who's just dependent on, most of the people, I think, at least employees, are dependent on their salary. I don't know about higher positions, but I do not have that much experience to kind of relate with you. But most of the employees are dependent on their salary. It's very hard to think about, okay, I'll just leave it one day without even building something or getting a proof of this particular, if it will work, or it's just something out of a dream. So how do you even go about doing that?
Yeah, that thought came to us as well. Next few days, we were discussing whether to bootstrap, whether to fundraise, and how to go about it. Can we even do this? Because it is quite difficult problem, right? And so it takes time. You can't just make an MVP of monitoring.
Yeah.
Like it has to be stable, right? It has to have certain features that other like the other tools are offering,
Yes.
uh, the basics of it. So uh, so you need to we need, and that's where will be evaluated. Like, do we have enough to keep going on for this long? And yeah, and that's how we decided. Like I think all four of us agreed on that. We can do this. Uh,
I think like it's really, for me personally, I get really excited around startups and ideas and building something, like one single team working on a small number of members working on something and producing out of the blue into the real world. I just really get excited around all of these things. That's why I generally ask these particular questions. How do you even think that? How can you do this? Other than that, like
think financial stability does bring uh, uh, is an angle to that, right? So yeah, it helps.
drawing a tangent from this particular measure as such, like I think there's a quote, I don't know, it goes about in Twitter that if you just throw a stone in Indranagar, I think you will hit a founder. Is that true?
I guess so. It must be true. We just have our corner at Jimmy's, so and we only talk between among us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think all the VC meetings are happening in Indranagar as well. So yeah, like
Yeah,
I'm sure
it's
that's true.
I like usually it's like I am basically right now in Noida. Noida is completely different from what Bangalore and other Bangalore especially is like. So it's very unrelatable and weird to think that every five people you meet is a
Gurgaon
founder.
is Bangalore.
Yeah, Gurgaon is pretty close to Bangalore, but Noida is completely different. So that's why I just asked this particular question. And then that, coming back to measure as such. So, like, I agree to most of the things that you said. I think so. You're building a tool that has all like everything that a monitoring tool should have, and that's what the aim of this particular library would be. um
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty cool to think about that. I like working with a monitoring library and actually building one. Like, how do you, like, I know there are pretty much like a lot of YouTube videos going about, like, okay, this is how you build an app, right? How do you even think, like, how can I build a monitoring library? I can't even start, like, where do I even start building a monitoring library? What would you suggest would be the way to even think like such a production level thing, like building an open source like monitoring library? How do you even go about?
Hmm. I think there are multiple components to it, and when you think out each of them separately, it starts making sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first thing that I had made was much earlier in 2012, 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, at that time, I used to use Mixpanel for product analytics,
Mm-hmm.
and would essentially they had their code open source. So I'll go and see like how they have written it, right? When I had to build something, I would get inspired from it and build have similar features about creating a local queue and sizing number of items that can be in the queue after which it should be pushed, etc. So those like mixed panel work pretty well, and those things we incorporated as well.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, right. Such libraries we have built like again multiple time
Mm-hmm.
because I was in a service company, so I'm like there will be every time there's a new project, you start with new login screen.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So like if you have any monitoring need, then you start with scratch again. So like yeah. So like I personally have done this multiple times. The backend components again, like we have Devji, that's one of the co-founders, and like he has experience with the system and
Mm-hmm.
the infra. And, so yeah, like he was able to also think through and like we put them together.
Okay. Like I think like what would you suggest to any other company out there? Like should they I had this idea like I think so every company should have their one single open source project out there. Might not be like a really good open source project, but I think so every company should have one because if you're able to build a certain kind of open source production level code that other companies might be forced to use because of its usefulness or maybe its features, then you have great engineering team. That's for sure. So I think so. What do you think is should every company have their own one small open source project out there or not?
Uh, like I'm not sure about should every company have it, but since that like my first company was Left Shift,
Mm-hmm.
uh, there also like we were making open source tool and
Mm-hmm.
uh, publishing it. Gojek had a huge culture of building open source tools. So we did that as well, right? And like apart from it, like it's also a good hiring strategy. Like if like people actually contribute to it, and you can hire great talent that has already interacted with your engineers and your code base.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Like, what would you suggest to someone who is pretty new to this? Like, I understand. Please give me advice here. Okay, I have 1 to 2 years of experience around in Kotlin. I do not have a lot of experience, but I want to contribute to my measure as such. How should I go about doing that?
Yeah, I think irrespective, like in programming, one thing that's very important is writing documentation.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have invested in writing very clear documentation, uh, and would love to know like if it's good enough for someone to get started on it.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone wants to contribute, just go through it, and they can raise a PR. They can create an issue, raise a PR,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, if any obstruction is coming between understanding, like we are there on Discord as well to help people around. So like there are a few people setting it up, and we are helping them out, right? Just for the even the contribution. So yeah, and we are continuously seeking feedback on documentation as well, so that we can make it better, so that everyone can who wants to contribute, they should be able to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, documentation is the way I think. uh, if when I started on Android, actually, the documentation sucked big time.
Yeah, yeah. Back then, yes. Yes.
Yeah, like text view documentation will be copied to every widget. So be it button or list view or anything, everything was text view, right? And at that time, there used to be a website called grep code where a whole of Android code was there. You can go through it and see what was happening actually inside it. So, like, I think that the primary instinct of any engineer is to go and
Mhm.
read something and understand and see how it's working and then reproduce. I think that's enough. Uh,
Like one more thing that you told, that a lot of companies that you have previously worked with usually have a very good ecosystem of building tools around things. So if somebody wants to learn, right, for example, monitoring tool, right, how should what study material would you point to so that I can even start with something like that? Because I know about Android apps, I do not know about monitoring tools. That's completely out of the range for me. What would you suggest? Like, study this material. This might help you out to understand how this particular tool works. How would you
mhm.
point to that?
I think the different kind of tools that's out there in the market, and first, I think you need to explore what kind of tools are there, what they do, how they're built, right? Whatever information you get about it, but particularly. First, we should understand as a mobile engineer what we are trying to monitor,
Mm-hmm.
and what we are trying to monitor is it's pretty defined. It basically it's between the design and engineering, and it's called human computer interfacing. That's something of my very deep interest. Uh, and there, like how anything that makes user wait. It could be for anything, right? Like it could like you click the icon and the app is launching and you are waiting. It could be that you are waiting for it to render. You are waiting for it to complete that API call to render next screen. So whatever you are waiting for, it could be anything. It crashed and now you are waiting for a very long time. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
how does it impact user experience and how does it impact user psychology? That's also pretty important. But I think once you start with human computer interfacing, and I think that becomes a really good point, good start point to start measuring. I think
Mm-hmm.
even if I didn't know all these things, how to build a good augmented tool. I knew how to make a good app and what it should be
Mm-hmm.
composed. I always had Apple's HCI guideline open even if I'm an Android engineer, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
really good documentation. And you read that and you come across references and you find much more.
Mm-hmm.
But for observability tool, you can look for Facebook has published a paper around their own internal tool called Scuba.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite that's quite a good inspiration.
Okay.
I should check it.
I'll check that out. It's called
Yeah.
Scuba. Okay.
Scuba,
Scuba. Okay.
SCUBA.
Scuba. Okay. One more thing is, I just want to do a little tangent from this particular topic, and like, is there any, like, I think so a lot of software engineers are kind of geeks. So is there any particular subject other than just software engineering that you like to study, like in your free time, or maybe just exploring?
I like to cook, and that's of very keen interest to me. So I pick a country and start watching video about it, what they cook, how they cook, what ingredient, what technique,
Yeah.
and then I try to replicate that. Uh, yeah, one country at a time.
Yeah, yeah. I think so. If you have like other things that you study about or do other things than just software engineering, your personality is kind of really becomes really great and sharp. That's what I try to do. Like usually, that's what I think. At least I started actually playing ukulele, so just
Mhm.
for the sake of playing it and trying to understand how music works, and that's particularly of interest. So,
Yeah, and with two things, you start getting perspective from two things, and you see where they correlate and where they
mhm,
move away from each other. So, you get ideas from one place to other. Uh, Yeah, so that happens.
Yeah. And like and extending on that particular point, like when I started to play ukulele, I actually didn't know that they had apps for ukulele tuning. So I just came
Mhm.
across these tuning apps that you need to, that's how you tune your guitar or maybe ukulele. Then I got the idea, okay, I can understand how sound works in these apps now. So it's kind of really interesting that how different interests can intersect into this one position, and you can
Yeah.
actually grow your knowledge out there. Yeah. Is there any like thing around like is there anything else that you want to share for Measure SH or to anybody who's watching or will watch or to try this tool out? Let me know what you think. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, sure. We have just released. It's been just 4 weeks since we have made this repo public. Would love people to try it out, give us feedback. Uh, would love to talk to people like how are their current monitoring practices, and what challenges they see in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that I can learn from them and incorporate all those things in this tool and make it really amazing for
Mm-hmm.
everyone.
Mm-hmm. I tend to agree. I'll try to pinpoint this tool in like every possible way I can so that they can try this tool out and easily access it. Other than that, I think so. I'll kind of extend my talks more to Android development because that's where I'm like okay-ish with. But yeah,
Mhm.
like what do you think about app development as such? Because I've seen a lot of founders who are not like technical founders, but more of non-technical ones who are just into building things, or maybe are talking more about no-code tools, right? What do you think like apps should survive in the world where no-code tools are getting more perfect with AI, and more things are trying to move towards web as compared to just apps? What do you think about apps? The future of apps, basically. That's what I'm asking.
Mhm. I think each of these technologies have their place, right? For some things, you can't move away from native. For something, Flutter is just enough because
Mm-hmm.
it has good performance, and as a business, it helps you keep the team lean, uh,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, while talking to different engineers, I found a pattern that in South America, most apps are built in React Native. I
Mm-hmm.
wondered why. And like, there are a lot of web engineers there, but very less mobile engineers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the web engineers who are building this as well, and then teaching others. And even then, someone becomes specialized mobile engineers, they know React Native,
Mm-hmm.
so that works out. Uh, so I think the stack choice is like it depends on multiple factor. Uh, and yeah, if someone is able to think of something and they're able to use a no-code tool to build it, and it's reaching their customer and they love it, nothing like it. Like the technology has enabled another person to release the app and reach out to their users, and they're
Mm-hmm.
loving it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there should be no complaint about it.
I think, but it becomes a mess when more and more users start to interact with this particular app, because I think native would be a much better approach as compared to app who has just been coded out of AI, who like the performance doesn't match. There are a lot of users. Maybe the apps start crashing. You have no idea how this apps is interacting with everyone. Then you start to rapidly hiring engineers so that you solve these problems. And the code itself is kind of spaghetti code because AI has written it. So what do you think is like the definition here, the line here that okay, use AI here, but not here. What do you think would be the line?
Like even I think currently like use AI for writing that one line between that method call, maybe, and be very open to figuring out whether it's wrong or right. Because I was trying out with Chat GPT, and for Android especially, they just
Mm,
create their own API, which is not even there in the documentation. So
mm,
be cautious over there, right? But in general, like when you covered from launching app to going on the scale, like you have covered a lot of things. I
Mm,
think like uh, each stage
mhm,
calls for a different approach, right?
mhm,
You can continue doing native. Yeah, maybe you have a core part of business which you want to run on native, but you want to experiment something very quickly. So maybe Flutter is a better way, or maybe a very really nice performant web app is a better way to try it out because you
mhm,
want to try it out cheaply.
mhm,
But it's always remember that it's not only about the feature, right?
mhm,
Uh, when you are interacting with the app, that performance
mhm,
is also the feature.
mhm. I agree.
When you it sort of smoothly go from point A to B,
Mhm,
and that is a feature. If there is a jank, your user
mhm,
might not like it unless you are a monopoly.
mhm. I tend to agree with that. Like I've seen this that like on Twitter there's a trend called that software engineering is no more a moat because the AI has enabled everything. Now everyone can write code. But I tend to disagree. Like we can actually see moat happening right now in this particular world where AI is very like present because the moat of Apple, for example, is design itself. It's not technology but rather design, that how it makes the user feel. And
Yep.
design is a mode for Apple. So if design is a mode for Apple, performance can be too. So anything can become a mode if you know how to do it right. And AI will always help you out in a longer run. That's what I think, at least.
Yeah, it's like so. When growing up, the only way to uh, get a computer was essentially you know how to code,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I picked up. Now it's growing up though, like you have one more tool in the arsenal which is AI, and you can talk to it and ask it different things, and it helps you with it. Just use it like a tool. Make sure you use it and learn the this new thing.
I agree. Like one more thing I wanted to, I was just curious. Like I think Anup sir, if I'm getting the name right, he's the DOE of he was the DOE of Grow, I think.
Yeah.
And like Grow is based on React Native, right? And like
Mhm.
was Rapido based on React Native as well, or was it like native code? If I'm allowed to ask.
So Grow was mix of native and React.
Okay.
Rapido was native.
Native. Okay. So, like, how do you what do you think is the advantage here that React Native poses than just writing Jetpack Compose code or maybe XML code or maybe KMP where you're going both platforms?
I think you have to like see it from multiple perspective. Like why Rapido used React Native must have been under circumstances, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Anup joined like just like in I think 2021,
Mm-hmm.
so it was like there even before that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, at Rapido, though, I when I was there, we were doing rewrite of the customer app,
Mm-hmm.
and at that point of time, we had all the options of doing Campy, Flutter,
Mm-hmm.
React Native, and native, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and we had so on the customer side of it, like we were like six of us working,
Mm-hmm.
um, and so you have to keep creating the feature because that's not stopping.
Yeah,
uh,
I agree.
so now the choices were React. So what was React Native? Why we didn't choose is because it drops frame
Mm-hmm.
very consistently, goes under 30 fps, 24 fps, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it has been no from long time for me. Flutter I like because it can run at very smooth frame rate.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Feels almost like native,
Mm-hmm.
but with that came the cost of training all the engineers to Flutter while they're releasing new features to train them on Flutter and also build a parallel app.
Mm-hmm.
Not happening.
Yeah.
Uh, so what we thought of it was we'll build native, and for some auxiliary feature which are not the core part, we'll just get really optimized web pages
Mm,
if needed. So we basically left adapters for that, like basically left provisions for that in the architecture. When I was there, we had not built anything in them,
mhm,
but that was good enough reason for us to keep building natively. Towards the end, we also tried KMP,
mhm,
where we built one library which worked on both iOS and Android. It was a success.
mhm,
Uh, Pretty sure they must be building a lot more of these such libraries
mhm,
now shared across, because if you can, like if you can't just fix the bug at one place, why will you choose to do it at two places?
mhm. Yeah. Like, one more thing. Like, I have actually two more questions extending from this particular position. Like, I've worked with Flutter as well, but I'm not that experienced, but I know a little bit of Flutter. Now, like, Flutter has what I think at least has a very um kind of a problem when it comes to adding libraries, because a lot of libraries could have been like, for doing a small thing, I need to add a library again and again, instead of, whereas the native code actually gives me already a pre-built thing that I can actually just use. So what do you think? The Flutter actually poses a very, lot of code is imported when it's not being used, it's just for using one single thing.
Mhm. I think that it can you can draw parallel over there from the web development as well, because
Mm-hmm.
like you will have libraries for every tiny thing, and you need to keep including that. But even in Android, much earlier, like you keep looking for the libraries because the OS won't support, like the framework won't have it natively
Mm-hmm.
apart from the widget things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it had async task, and when RX Java came, like people were so happy that now
Mm-hmm.
they can put this in, and it will become easier. We had retrofit to define
Mm-hmm.
uh, API calls, OK HTTP to glide to download photos. So like there's so many libraries that became default in Android development that now nobody thinks of it as a library,
Yeah.
but we have seen it being released and adopted, and like everything has been library.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing that has been very common to hear from Android developer and not from iOS developer is if there is some UI and you need to do some complex thing, like there is no library for this because but on iOS side, yeah, there is a by default, like the engine is UI engine is much better to begin with, so you can do like even really good animations pretty easily.
I agree. iOS has amazing animation as compared to Android. I think so. Like, Android ecosystem itself is catching up as it is releasing KMP, then Jetpack Compose. It's very close to how Swift UI works, as compared to UI Kit. So that's what I think Android is actually doing right now. And as of the new Google I/O, I think they have truly started to support and promote KMP as such. What do you
Yeah.
think? Like, if somebody has a startup and they're just starting off, right? They just want to make an app. Should they start with KMP or experiment with just native code, or maybe React Native or Flutter?
Uh, Again, like there is multiple factors. Like one thing is if you as a founder are coding it, like what do you know?
I
And
agree. Yeah.
if you know Flutter, then do you and if you want to make the app in native, like do you have enough time to make an app in native? Learn that, make it there while you are also learning, trying to maybe promote your app, so you are learning marketing on the side. So
Mm-hmm.
like uh, or like the kind of talent that you have access to,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it could be a different access pool in India and a different access pool in Africa or South America.
Mm-hmm.
So the location changes completely, like what you will be building. Technically, like yeah, there could be some features where say you are working very closely with GPS, and every year, like say uh, Google and iOS, Android, Google and Apple is innovating on that. Just as an example,
Mm-hmm.
and you have the latest and the greatest out there. maybe your React Native or Flutter will take some time
Mm-hmm.
to reach there, but you might want to be featured as the first app to support it.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, because your UI, your branding goes well with that, that you support it and you are the latest and the greatest. So maybe you have to stick with native over there.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a multifold decision. I think even websites in today's time can make a really performant app if we just wrap it inside activity.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, how much of them, how many screens, how many engineers,
Mm-hmm.
uh, all of these matter. Like, will you write really good web code?
Mm-hmm.
If you will, then it will work just like the app. At
Mm-hmm.
this point of time, the devices are strong enough. The the web viewer has really good APIs.
Mm-hmm.
Will you always be writing the most performant code for the web? Maybe not. Then maybe give native a try.
Yeah.
I have seen native app struggling for performance, like majorly, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I have seen even iOS apps struggling for performance.
Mm-hmm.
So like, we can fuck up anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that the takeaway right here is rather than actually focusing on like what code or library that we're focusing on, it's much more how your branding relates with the idea you have and how fast you want to release it. That will tell you what kind of library or language you want to use. That's what I actually take from this.
Yeah, like I'll like to give an example where like a few years ago we were making an app for a trading company.
Mm-hmm.
Where we were suggesting them to basically build in certain way because it will be performant and very user experience, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
no, our customers just want to put a number and click a button, like they're not into good UX.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up convincing them, but not to the extent that we would have loved to. And now you
Mm-hmm.
see there's so many fintech apps, so many trading apps that's out there in the market.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like someone is like, this will be your small window trading app. They
Mm-hmm.
just that they are proud of just branding, saying
Mm-hmm.
that our UX is the best,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah, it's the time, is the is multiple thing that comes into factor on deciding what you will do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. Like, I kind of want to end on this thing and actually talk to you more about the future of apps as such, because I'm particularly really excited about augmented reality in apps. I've seen that AR has played a lot of role, or maybe not a lot of role, but became a feature in apps like Amazon or maybe Zomato. When you go and open up KFC, you can see view in AR and you can see the Zinger burger on your table and actually play around with it. What do you think about the future of AR as such in and around apps?
Mhm. I think in some things these are really useful. Like say, uh, on in operation theater, you can use devices to augment
Mm-hmm.
your environment and then precisely know what is happening over there, or augmented reality in farming. There are multiple of these cases. Like, I'm not sure how useful Jingle Burger on table
Yeah, yeah.
feels like. It must be really good to see that for sure. Uh, I was checking out. I think Nike has a web app. I
Mm-hmm.
was checking out a shoe. I will put it on my table and
Yeah.
see it from an angle. But that almost like is 2 minutes. It's like a toy for us. We're like 2 minutes and we play with it and we stop. But
Yeah,
there
yeah,
are,
yeah.
well, there are other implementations where they're really useful, and like sometimes it's a matter of death and life.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah, like augmented reality, like yeah, certainly like it's something pretty useful for us.
Mm-hmm. Like when I had a real world application of it. That's why I usually ask this question to every app developer, because when I was buying my ukulele from Amazon, I actually wanted to know what size it is. and I actually wanted to compare it with my door and everything. So,
Uh,
and the only way to actually know was to actually play around with its AR. And Amazon had an AR version of a ukulele, and then I can see how this particular ukulele, what's the size of it, and how can I carry it? What kind of bag would I require? So I think it has its own use cases. In I think so. It's very specific use cases. But other than
yeah.
that, it's really cool to play around. That's what I think AR does.
Yeah, I have tried using Urban Ladder to like place furniture and see like I'm not able to get much idea from it.
Yeah,
So like and you don't know like whether they're actually that size that it is showing
it
or like
might
it
be.
might
Yeah,
be
yeah, yeah. It might
also.
be in the measurement might be wrong, but yeah, I think the more and more we go into the future, I think so. A real world application around AR and VR, as for example, the Apple Vision Pro came out. Um, we will see more of apps for them as compared to just alone phones. That will be exciting, and that's what I think at least. One,
Yeah, I think
yeah.
it's a good tool to enhance the user experience, right? And the more basically it's like you are bringing the human and technology much closer and much easier to interact with.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you see like from this click-based navigation to say voice-based navigation, with the voice-based navigation helps you reach many more people who were earlier not able to use your app because it takes
Mm-hmm.
learning few things.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, my mom uses Google Apps all the time because all Google Apps can be navigated through voice, but
Mm-hmm.
not other apps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's super exciting stuff that every Android developer should, explore.
Yeah.
Other than that, like, one more thing, I just wanted to. I usually ask a lot of career stuff around in this particular podcast, right? So, like, as a DOE of a certain company, it's very high position, and if someone like me who is just an Android developer and asking like, okay, how can I become a DOE someday? Like, how would you give someone a roadmap? Okay, this do this and learn this. Maybe you will have the skills. Good, you will become good enough to even become the DOE or maybe a principal engineer someday, staff engineer maybe. What do you think?
Like I had not planned this, so I don't have a roadmap as such. But I think when I reflect back, what I can certainly see is there has been a pattern in how I did it. So I always tend to hire people who I can learn from, who I think are better than me. I'll put them in my team. I will start delegating stuff to them, and I will start asking my manager that what's something I can take from
Mm,
their right, helping them first, and then taking the whole control on that part
mhm,
uh, later, right? And I think keep when I kept doing that at every stage, I have just like moved
mhm,
from where I was like to wherever I am. I think that's the only thing. Like delegate your work, and you can't unless you hire better people.
mhm,
Uh, and then take work from plate of your manager, like whatever you think that you can excites you and you want to learn, just like ask them. They will be very glad to do that,
mhm,
unless you have a bad manager who might feel insecure.
then start upgrading your LinkedIn.
Reality, you have might have an insecure manager, and that person might not be willing to give you, unless there's feedback that okay,
Yeah.
like this is you might be able to do it 3 months down the line, not now or something like that, right?
Mhm.
Insecurity is real.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so. People at higher positions already have idea. For someone who just joins in, they know how to delegate tasks much better than anyone who is junior because they have gone through the same thing and they can understand if you're capable enough to solve a particular problem. So that's what I think most of the managers and lead engineers are really good at. But I think that as more and more people can get to the higher and higher positions, for example, become a lead or maybe a principal engineer, they get to a point where there's a differentiation between become a manager or become a staff engineer. So how should even one choose that? Like when should we even go into management and maybe leave coding, um, then maybe coding might excite me and management does not. What do you think is much better, or how do you even choose between these?
Try both.
Hmm.
Uh, Try both. Yeah, seriously, try both. Uh, say you are a senior engineer, you want to switch between, select between lead role and the EM role. Talk to a lead in your team and the EM in your team. Take one task from their plate off.
Hmm.
Try doing it. See what you enjoy more. If you enjoy both, take more. Till the time you find, you might be able to find that you enjoy one thing much more than the other, or you might enjoy all of it. Then just go for it.
Yeah.
I enjoy all of it. I might not have code actively, but I'm always out there in the production support or
Hmm.
uh, even when the architecture is being discussed and designed, like go to the every nitty-gritty of it. When I was Rapido or even Gojek, right?
Hmm.
Not because I was micromanaging, but it was mostly about like I'm just curious that how it is being built, and
Hmm.
I have very few inputs too.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think this is the thing about technical founders. They get really excited about tech stuff and they like marketing as well. So they get stuck with like doing both. And yeah, I think so. It's pretty exciting thing.
There is a thing that you can do, like if you know certain thing, delegate it because you'll be able to coach the other person better.
Hmm.
Uh, right. So if you know coding, delegate coding, learn marketing.
I think like this is something that I have seen other founders do. I don't know, not my experience. But I've seen that I think so coding is much more intense task. So it is like a lot of you have to code on one particular thing for hours on end. Whereas when you're a founder, your attention is kind of distributed because you are making a lot of decisions. So you cannot technically code because you cannot concentrate on code because a lot of things are around there that might need you to make a decision. So that's nice.
I think like since I was like the time when I was junior engineer to now, I think the only thing that I kept reducing was my focus time. Like uh, earlier there will be almost like 3 to 4 focus time throughout the day,
Hmm.
where I was in that burst. And from there, it has almost went to zero.
Yeah.
As become a senior engineer, now you're coaching certain thing, or someone will ping you. So like maybe it reduce from 4 to 3, then
Hmm.
2, then 1. Then you are just like uh, you are not actively coding
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah. It's the curse of becoming a founder. Yeah, I agree.
Or even manager, like it will reduce.
Yeah,
Even senior engineer, it will reduce because now you are not only responsible for your code but also 3 more people. So like it is bound to reduce.
agree. Is there any one particular advice that you would like to give anyone like out there who is just starting or passing out from college? Right? It's just maybe like it's 2024 and I've just passed out. I want like I might have a like a good occasion job. I work in a service based company. I want to grow as a developer and maybe someday own my own company around maybe I have an app, become a founder, start something. So is there any piece of advice that you would like to share with them?
I think like sorry, can you repeat your question?
Like the thing is usually I've seen that let's take my example. When I was in back in my college, I did not have that much people around me who are founders, who are people who have built their own app, trying to maybe monitor their performance or maybe building their own games. I loved the idea of building my own game. I loved the idea of making my own app, but I didn't have people around me, and I wasn't aware of these things were happening in Gurgaon, Noida, Bangalore. Right, I always wanted to enter one. What's this one piece of advice that you would give someone so that like this is what you do right now, so that you can start your track to becoming better developer or maybe better in your career and become a great founder someday? That's what I'm asking.
I think for becoming a better developer, like I didn't have that either because I was in my college when Android and I was released, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And the social media was not as active at that point of time, but I could certainly access Apple's documentation and Android documentation.
Mhm.
I bought a phone, I went through documentation, I installed it, I started coding. Right. Then I saw that by the year end, Apple was giving design award. Like, okay, why these apps are getting award? Like,
Mhm.
what's about them? I like as a practice even till now, I always install all the Apple Design Award apps
Mhm.
and Google Design Award apps and try it out and figure out like
Mhm.
what makes them worthy of award, right? So
Mhm.
understanding that, uh, I think collaborating with your stakeholders also,
Mhm.
like I have paired program more with designers than the engineers because they bring a different perspective.
Mhm.
I know internals of Android API because they have been using shaders and everything in the Photoshop.
Uh-huh.
Uh, at that time,
Yeah,
people used
yeah,
to use
yeah,
Photoshop.
yeah, yeah.
So I will use the exact same API search that what is the API equivalent to this in Android, and I will open the canvas and draw things on that.
Mhm.
Uh, right. So none of the UI that felt like it too difficult to do ever felt difficult for me because like I exactly knew that I can open the canvas and draw it as a
Mhm.
last step if I could
Mhm.
not find anything. So I think that helps. You are when you are coding, you are building the ideas of product design. The users talk to the get closer to the user. I think that has been one of the things that we practiced in the early days of Go as well, right? Like we will every 3 months we'll go out to Jakarta. I was in the driver app team
Mhm.
and talk to the drivers that what makes them sad about the app,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? Try to learn from that. Like, what could we do that will make their life, day-to-day life, easier with the application? Like,
Mhm.
so came out, right? So understanding your customer, understanding
Mhm.
your benchmarking yourself with the best out there, like with the design awards, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and yeah, when you look through all these things, you find people on Stock Overflow, Twitter. Like I remember, like I used to talk on Twitter with some guy in China who used to build app as well.
Mhm.
Like I because I'd found his code in GitHub, so I like
Mhm.
him and he helped me out with a certain thing that I was stuck with. So like it
Mhm.
works out. Like you just look out like for it
Mhm.
and where you stand and what is the benchmark and
Mhm.
what you're trying to build. I think and customer obsession is certainly like if you
Mhm.
want to be a founder,
Mhm.
talk to your customer. That's the only thing you can do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so. Like most of the founders that I've seen this consistent habit, they try to do for I don't know, like there is no reason for doing anything they do. They just do for the sake of doing it, and they enjoy whatever they're doing. And by the time they're enjoying it, their innate curiosity takes over, and they try to spot opportunities in and gaps in these, and try to develop or produce items that serve these particular markets. That's what I actually think, at least.
Yeah, like it's a long-term commitment if you're trying to build something, and unless you're enjoying it, you will not be able to do it. So better pick up things that you enjoy doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Agree. Yeah, this is it from my side. If you have any particular question or maybe any particular advice for anyone, um, yeah.
I think nothing as such. I think I see a lot of LinkedIn posts about preparing for interviews.
Mm-hmm.
That just grinds my gear. Like, why do people go into so much details of everything? Like trying to figure out every nitty-gritty detail that whether the person knows this or
Mm-hmm.
doesn't know this. Like find a reason to hire a person. Find that if the person can learn anything because you also learned on the job.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's a good takeaway for anyone, because you don't have to be very good at it. You just have to be good enough and have the curiosity to explore more and actually have the ability to ask and learn, because that's how most people learn, and that's how we develop products, most circumstances. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
At both Gojek and Rapido, like we had reduced our interview times to 1 day. Like we'll
Wow.
give a code base, refactor it, talk about the architecture. By the
Mm-hmm.
end of it, 4 hour conversation, we are done. Either by the end of it, we'll let you know either we are working together or not.
Oh,
Right?
wow. You're not asking any more DSA questions, thank God.
Yeah, we'll make fun games like there used to be hangman games to build a bouncing ball, like
Yeah, yeah.
basically ball from somewhere, and like design that in Android. How will you do that? Like simple things. Internet is open. Search for the answer because that's how you will be doing that in the in your actual job. So better do that, right? I think one of the interview was about the one guy who came with good knowledge of MBI, and I didn't know it.
Hmm.
Like, I saw it in the resume. Like, have you? And I asked him like whether he knows reactive pattern, etc. Like, sorry, not reactive, MVVM.
Hmm.
Like, no, like he had been practicing MVI mostly, and then like I just opened on my browser and I started asking question, and he was able to explain me to so much that by the end of it, I learned MVI.
Yeah,
It's good to hire that person, right? Because
yeah.
he is lead who can explain this to anyone and make them understand.
I think so. It was like I think there was this person, Friedman, I think, explained um, physics from like a 5 year old to a quantum physics level, from starting from very basics. I think if a person can do that, he certainly can do a lot of things and build something really good in a product. And that's what
Yeah,
I try to do at least, and try to explore these small things and understand how these particular things relate, just for the sake of doing that. Yeah.
yeah.
So this is it, and thank you for actually getting me and asking. I was annoying you with all these questions, but yeah, thank you for
No,
joining and
thanks,
answering them.
thanks for hosting me.
I hope you enjoyed this session and it added some real value to you. If it did, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye bye.